So, Richard, what are the primary challenges that an aging population pose for developed countries?
The aging of the population affects, and over the next few decades promises to transform, virtually every dimension of public and private life, from the shape of the family to the shape of the geopolitical order. Developed countries face the challenge of more slowly growing workforces, and in many of the faster aging countries in continental Europe and Japan, actually sharply contracting working age populations. This will be a drag on economic growth. As populations age, rates of savings and investment are also likely to decline. Graying also means paying. It means paying more for pensions, more for health care, more for nursing home care for the frail elderly. So perhaps the most fateful challenge is how to maintain a decent standard of living for the old without imposing a crushing burden on the young.
And what about the emerging countries?
As the emerging countries age with a lag, they will face many of the same challenges as the developed countries, from stagnant or contracting workforces to falling savings and investment. They will also find it increasingly difficult to maintain the adequacy of retirement systems without greatly increasing their cost. But there is a difference, and a crucial difference that may actually make the aging challenge more daunting in emerging markets than it is in the developed world. And that's that many developing countries, many emerging markets, Brazil included, are aging before they have in place a fully developed welfare state. They still have large informal sectors. Many workers do not contribute to the pension system. So countries in the emerging world run the risk of growing old before they grow rich. And just as in our personal lives, it's better to grow rich before we grow old. If we grow old first, we're likely never to become rich. So it is for nations as a whole.
In a recent interview with Exame magazine, you mentioned about Brazil's absurd generosity with regards to its pension system. Why is this so absurd, and is it going to be sustainable for the future?
Let us say that the generosity of Brazil's pension system, the RGPS for the private sector and the RPPS for the public sector, is extraordinarily high, not just by the standards of emerging markets, but by the standards of most developed countries as well. I think it's probably fair to say that no country in the world which is at a similar stage of economic and social development has as generous and expensive a pension system as Brazil does. Now, on the one hand, you can say that this is a triumph of enlightened social policy. Brazil's pension system certainly is adequate, and adequacy is a legitimate goal of public policy. The question becomes, as you suggested, is it sustainable? And the answer is patently no. Over the next 35 years, the aged dependency ratio in Brazil, that is the ratio of retired beneficiaries to working age adults, will triple. In a pay-as-you-go government pension system, such as Brazil has, the cost rate, or the necessary contribution rate to maintain the adequacy of benefits, will rise directly and proportionally to the increase in the age dependency ratio, all other things being equal. Of course, Brazil has begun to chip away at that generosity in a series of reforms since the late 1990s. So pension spending isn't actually projected to triple in Brazil, it's merely projected to double, from about 12% to 22 or 23. This is a crushing economic burden.
Richard, what will happen to Brazil if it doesn't change its current pension systems?
First of all, let me state it differently. Brazil will change its current pension systems. The only question is whether it does so sooner, giving today's workers time to adjust and prepare by saving more through the complementary system, by planning to work longer, or whether it changes it later, in which case the adjustment costs will be much more painful. If we change sooner, we can do so in a way that maintains the overall adequacy of retirement income for the elderly, which is one of Brazil's great achievements. Changing is not a choice. The question is whether the change is made with forethought by forward-looking political leaders, or whether the tough decisions are passed to future leaders and then passed again to future leaders until finally Brazil is engulfed by an economic and social crisis which requires sudden, last-minute draconian cuts in the generosity of the pension system.